Hello, welcome guys to this video in which we are going to learn some Python. We're going to be learning some Python basics. We're going to be learning data types and variables. Okay, so my name is Diego and I want to teach you guys this so you can, have a foundation of skills to be able to move on. Okay guys, so let's get started. Okay, so what do we know about variables? So variables are, for example, in math, variables are things that we use to store a value, right? X equals 4, X equals this, right? In programming, they are a little bit more advanced. You can you can you can use anything. I mean, you can almost make the name of a variable be anything. You could use name. Wait, you actually cannot do a an uppercase variable. You can, usually us programmers, we like to, use lowercase name variables. Okay, so when you're naming a variable, always try to use a lowercase letter. Okay, so for example, let's use name, name underscore. This could be a variable, name underscore, and you could have Diego. Okay, so what is this right here that I just did? So when you have, okay, when you have a variable that has a value that is in quotation marks, when you have quotation marks, that means that it is a string. So a string, so let me write this better. You could write it like this too, string, whatever. You could do name string, for example, and you have Diego. Okay, so this is a string. A string is a data type that um, we use in Python. A string is just, they could be sentences, letters, words, anything. But it has to, oh, and even numbers, but it has to be surrounded in quotation marks for it to be categorized as a string, okay? So, now let's go back to math, right? So, whenever you're solving an equation in math, you typically have, you solve for x, right? So when you solve for x, you get, for example, x equals 4. So let's use that, x equals 4. This is an integer, okay? So integers are whole numbers. Integers is a data type. It's just like strings, it's a data type. So we use integers to represent whole numbers, like for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, right? So uh, integers are only whole numbers. They cannot have decimal points. So you cannot have something like this, 4.4, 4.3. You cannot have something like that. Okay, guys? So just keep that in mind. Integers are whole numbers. Okay, so let's write this down. Int x. For example, this is an integer. This is an integer data type. We're gonna call it x, and it's going to be 4. So we have a 4, right? Okay, so that is another data type. Integers and strings are data types. These are the data types we're looking at. Okay. So now, what do we do if we want to add a decimal value to it? Okay, so uh, we could have something like pi. Like what if we want to represent pi or something? Float equals 3.14. Okay, so a float is another data type that we use. So we have strings, integers, and floats so far, right? So floats is another data type, but they represent numbers that have decimals in them. Even if you write a 3 like this on a float, when you print out the float, it is going to show us a 3.0 because that's just how float works. They always have to have a decimal point into them, okay? So for example, your GPA, let's say you have a GPA of 3.7, you would use a float to um, to represent your GPA, okay? So let's keep it as a 3.14. Okay, so of course, like I said, you can use any name. You can use any name for your variable. It does not have to be float, of course. You could use GPA equals 3.7, and that would be considered a float. I am just using a float just for the sake of learning, just for the sake of you guys being able. Okay, so for example, let's do this one. Float pi, float underscore pi. We know that that is a float, and it represents the number pi because 3.14. Okay, guys. So let's see. So now we have booleans. Okay, so booleans. So let's think about booleans. We have true. Booleans are very simple. Okay, so booleans are just true or false. Okay, so whenever you have a boolean expression, it's always, or a boolean data type, it's always is going to be either true or false. That's really simple, right? So booleans are going to be very useful when you are trying to uh, you know use a while loop, a for loop, when you're trying to do conditionals. But that's something that we're going to learn more later on. Okay, so yeah, so now we have booleans. Okay, all right, so now we're going to be covering oh yeah, also for Python you write true with a capital letter, with a capital T, or you could do false, like I said, false, like that. Okay, so we're gonna keep it like true. Okay, all right, so now I'm going to introduce you guys to lists. Okay, so this is the last data type we will cover in this video. There are more data types, but they are more advanced, and those data types are things like tuples, dictionaries, all those kinds of other data types that we have. But in this video we will only cover strings, integers, floats, booleans, and now we're going to cover lists. Okay, so when you go grocery shopping, what do? You get a list, right? So okay, so we're gonna have grocery list as the name of our variable, or yeah, as the name of our list, which is this is the variable, and the variable is going to represent a list. Okay, so in Python, this may vary for the syntax of different other languages, like of course this is written differently in C and in Java, JavaScript, but we're learning Python, right? So we have a list is represented with brackets. Okay, so you could have a list of integers, you could have a list of floats, you could have a list of strings. In this case, we're going to have a list of strings because it's a grocery list. We're going to use strings. Okay, so let's say we need milk. Okay, let's say we need, I don't know, apples. And let's say we need some chips. Okay, so this is our grocery list. We're gonna go shopping with this grocery list right there. Okay, now what if we want to represent some other kind of list? Let's say we want to represent a number list, right? Remember, you could use any type of name for your variable. It does not have to have the word list in it. Okay, this is Python, so this so it's very simple. You can use this numbers. Actually, let's use it like that, numbers. And you do brackets, and you put 1, 2, 3, 8, 4. You can put them in any order you want, anything. Okay, so this is another list, and is a list of integers. Okay, all right, so so how do we print out stuff out on the screen, right? Well, I'm going to introduce you to this function called print. And what this function is going to do is it's just going to print out stuff on this on the screen. It's probably the most popular function. Well, not popular, but it's probably the most used function in Python and in any programming languages. Of course, you use a different syntax. So for example, in Java, you don't use print, you use system.out, but that's Java, right? But in Python, we use print to print stuff out on the screen, All right, so let's do Diego, right? Let's print that out on the screen. Okay, so one Python file, and it prints out Diego, right? So now we could do, instead of using Diego, we could do the variable name string, right? So let's print that out on the screen, and it gives us, the same thing, Diego, because the variable has a value of Diego, of a string, right? All right, so now we're gonna do int x. You could do int x. All right, and then we get 4. Okay, so this is gonna give us a value of 4. Okay, we are just printing out these stuff. Like you can print when you print bool. Like the Boolean expression, you will get true. If you actually print the list, it's actually print the list, grocery list. Okay, it's actually going to print out the list. Look at this. You see this? It actually printed out milk, apples, and chips. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so now let's print out numbers. Let's go run. Okay, and it actually printed out the numbers, as you can see. All right, so I'm gonna introduce you guys to another function that you can use. It's called type. In this function, you can and this function is used to find the data type of a certain value. Okay, so for example, type of 10. What is the data type of the number 10? Well, it's a whole number, right? So it's gonna be an integer. Okay, so how do we print that on the screen? We're gonna do print type 10, and it gives us class int right here, right? So that means that 10 is an integer, as we know, right? Now let's do name string. We know that this is a string. We know that the data type of this is a string, so it's going to give us class string. Okay, guys? So this will be it for today, guys. I really hope you guys learned something. I will be following up with some more videos. The next video is going to be about basic operators. And yeah, guys. Thank you all for watching. I really, I really hope you guys learned something today, and I think you guys can implement some stuff on your own. And yeah, thank you guys. Bye.